Yeah, so you were saying that it's like Web3 Foundation, Ethereum Foundation are both based in the city for that specific reason. In
Yes.
Zug, you call it?
Yeah, Zug, Z-U-G.
Zug.
It's actually the German word for train, which is always fun. When I'm on the train, it's like, dieser Zug goes to Zug. Yeah, so, haha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just, I mean,
There,
it's
there
a coincidence that it means train. It's like from an older word, but yeah,
I
so,
was also going to say there are a lot of conferences also that take place in Zug. I know the CV Labs is also down there, so it's like I think for years Zug has been a real hub of innovation within crypto. They were quite early on that train. Not to come back to your train comment, Bill, but
yeah.
yeah. Bill? Do you know when Zug became Zug in terms of Crypto Valley Zug?
Yeah, so really, like, Ethereum Foundation started up here in 2014,
Hmm.
2014 or early 2015, and Bitcoin Suisse actually before that. And really, like in 2017, I would say is really when it came into its own. Like when we had what was that? I guess 2 cycles ago. At this point,
Right.
the 2017 cycle, things were really starting to happen here in Zug. Um, so yeah, I'm happy. Like I know I can start discussing this when we're doing the actual podcast. I have lots to say about the history of Zug and Web3 Foundation being here and everything.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, the floor is all yours if you want to take it. This is super interesting. Like I was saying before, I didn't realize that Switzerland had different laws depending on the town or the territory, and I just think that's so cool that it kind of allowed for this aggregation of like real decentralized Web3 companies to start operating in Zug because of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the amazing things about, like Zug is a confederacy, so basically like, I think of it as like the US under the Articles of Confederation, where each individual state and each individual city has a lot of power to make the rules. They actually, I find it really interesting that there is a president that most people don't know who the president is. It's if you're not really paying attention to politics, you don't know the president because there's essentially a council that runs the country. They have limited power, and the presidency just rotates amongst the people in the council every year.
Right, so
Like,
is the presidency more like a formal role rather than an actual role with any authoritative power? Like, would you say it's the same as, I guess, in the UK? Obviously, we have the royal family and we have, kings and queens and all that, but like they don't really have any executive power over the state.
so there is some power. They do. There is a president, but essentially the president is a first among equals. So
Hmm.
he or she is still in charge of the things that he or she used to be in charge of, but also has this sort of ceremonial role because most countries they want to say like, all right, who's the president of this country? I want to meet with the president. Well, we have a president, but it's not exactly a figurehead. They're still part of this federal council, but they don't really have much additional power. It's the
Right.
same. Like Zug has Switzerland has a federal city. It does not have a capital city. So like people talk about Bern as the capital city, but really, it's technically not a capital city. It's just where the federal government offices are. So Switzerland has really taken decentralization to as much of a degree you can, I think, in the modern age, and I think that just fits so well with crypto.
Oh yeah, 100%. I was just going there. I was just going to say that how much I like the fact that the president, that the role of the president exists, but you don't really know who the person is. Similar to, we know, Satoshi Nakamoto existed, but we don't know who the person is, right?
Yeah, but you don't need to know, right? You don't need to know. Honestly, I understand. In some countries that I won't name, like the president is a very loud presence, and know a lot about their personal life. But you don't really need to know. I don't need to know. Satoshi Nakamoto was married. He made Bitcoin. He set stuff up. And it's similar here. It's like the president is doing the work, but on a day to day basis, I don't need to know about that. And I think again, there's a lot of like corollaries with blockchain about work can be done without having specific entities, not needing to know who the person is behind a specific account, etc.
Not wanting to hijack the conversation here or any of the questions here, but Bill, I've never had a chance to ask you. You work so closely with Polkadot governance. I wonder what that's like living in such a decentralized place on such a decentralized protocol, and what that's like, just living amongst that. Like, was that when coming to Zug? Like, what's that like living between those?
Yeah, so I'm only half living in that. I'm not yet a Swiss citizen, so I'm still an American citizen. So I can't vote, but I'm very aware of what's happening. One thing that I think is very interesting, and that's a great parallel with Polkadot, is the referenda. So Switzerland is very famously has direct democracy. So most major decisions are made just a direct vote. Just all right, what percentage of people want to do X and what percentage of people want to do not X. And so you see, all the time ads for specific referenda, for specific things, which I think is actually incredibly interesting. When I go back to the US, I see lots of political signs, and I assume it's like this in the UK. I don't know. I've never lived there, so I've never noticed. But like, vote for this person, vote for that person. This person is great. That person is great. And here you see, like, here is a law we want to pass. So right now, Zug is a small town. There's a lot of discussion on whether or not there should be this new huge building, this 80-meter high skyscraper. And so you see signs saying, all right, no to having this huge building overshadowing the rest of our small places, versus like, yes, we need more living space. I think it's just such a better way of living, right? Of like saying, all right, here's a particular decision that needs to be made. Not, oh, I trust this person or someone from this party versus that person or someone from that party. I think it's healthier, and it's better for democracy.
100%, yeah, and it promotes like what the actual regulation is, what the actual law is, what you stand to gain or lose if you vote for or against it, rather than for a person. I haven't really, like, I live in London, and I haven't really seen too many billboard ads, promoting a member of a certain party over another. But I think, and I could be dead wrong, but I think because London's such a busy town where everyone's just so busy, in their own little bubble, that I don't think too many Londoners care deeply about these kind of issues. So therefore, we don't really see too many political ads and stuff. On the other side, I'm originally from Romania, and I can tell you that's a whole different story, right? Like Romanian politics and passing laws, like you've gave me the example in Switzerland. I feel like Romania's taken that idea and just flipped it completely around. So instead of informing citizens about, hey, there's this new law that we're looking to pass, we need your guys' feedback. There's been on more than one occasion, the Romanian government passed bills at like 3 a.m. at night, right? When no one's awake, or like on a Sunday at 3 a.m. So like you wake up and like nothing's changed. It's not being reported anywhere. Nobody knows about it. But like they're literally working in the dark to make sure that they pass laws that are advantageous to the current government or to the current people in the government without the general public knowing about it. And obviously that's a huge issue.
Yeah, and another great thing about on-chain governance, right, is that is all very open, very visible. You can see what's happening. With Polkadot governance, there's periods of time you can't do things quickly. You have to announce it before it comes into effect and before people can vote on it. So this is one of the things I think like blockchain governance. Blockchains in general are so much more useful than just what they're being used for now. Like I see so many opportunities in governments. Again, I'm not familiar with Romanian government, but based on
I can tell you more about it.
We can discuss. But based on what you said, right? Like I can totally see like being able to see ahead of time. All right, what are the possible conflicts of interest? What are the benefits and drawbacks of this? Having time to discuss it, not having it passed at 3 a.m. without anybody knowing about it. Like blockchains are amazing at this stuff.
100%.
What's also nice is there are so many examples to draw from the real world in terms of different governance examples. I think, Bill, you're much more you know much more about this than I do based on how closely you work with Polkadot governance. But I'm thinking, as we've been talking about that, I was thinking about the U.S. also as an American, but even in the U.S. we have some really bespoke and different models. And thinking about how New York City recently went towards things like ranked choice voting for local elections, or when we do things like the caucus system. Before I worked in blockchain, I had a brief period of time in politics where I worked on one of the US presidential elections and learning about the Iowa caucus system and how intricate it is as a system, how mathematical in terms of how many votes are going to come out of a particular, voting establishment, how many people go in, how many, just all the dynamics around that. It's quite intricate and quite complex. And it's really neat to be working in a field, I think, with Web3 in general, where we can think critically about governance systems and really take from these like real life examples.
Oh yeah, and I feel like it also gives you the speed that we just simply didn't have, the speed of iteration that we didn't have as a, as a society before. Like it used to take us how long, like one generation, two generations before to figure out, is this governance system, does this work? Like you look at that piece of paper, right? You look at communism on paper. Fantastic, guys, let's get after it. 1930s, we all want to jump on that train, right? And then communism comes and it's an absolute shit show all over the world. Well, most parts of the world. China's apparently been able to kind of make it work, but not at some, cost of freedom and, privacy and all that stuff. But it doesn't work. But it took us like a really long time. And he's brought like almost like a modern dark age for a little while in Eastern Europe, right? Like you can actually test governance on chain. We've got so many chains and so many projects that are doing an amazing job. We've got obviously Polkadot. You've got all these projects that have already proven that new forms of governance exist and they are efficient, and they also have the underlying technology to back it up. And I've said this before, but I don't see any reason why voting shouldn't be on chain. Like it's such an important thing that you want to make sure we use the best systems possible to record and store that information, and it is not corruptible by anyone. And I don't see a better way of doing that. Like the technology is there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with voting on chain is not so much the technology itself, because that is an amazing thing, especially if you have zero knowledge proofs or other ways of really hiding your vote. Then because there are reasons, I will say in Polkadot governance, people being able to see what I voted on, sometimes it can be a little bit challenging, right? Because I do have I do have an identity tied to my account. People say, well, why did you
Right.
vote this? I think you should vote yes on this. So I can totally see why we're still working on the user experience to develop that. But yeah, I think there are a lot of benefits to having provable provable votes. Instead of just papers or closed source systems that people tap buttons on.
Yeah, paper has always been a weird one because, like, what's there to stop me? And I didn't know this, since seeing as you're both from the US, I didn't know this up until recently, that not all states require an ID to vote. And I'm like, so like, how does that work then? Like, can I literally go behind the wheels of a car, drive to another state, and vote again? And the answer is probably yes, because no one cares and no one checks. And if they don't take my ID,
So I can
like,
say, coming from Pennsylvania, which is one of those states that an ID is not required. It may, at least it was not when I left 6 years ago. But essentially, you have to go to your specific voting area. It was called a ward
yeah,
in Pittsburgh, and give them your address of where you live, and they can say, okay, well, this person who has lived there, has voted or not. So while theoretically, there are some, and usually I know the person who's behind. It's these wards are relatively small. It's a few hundred people,
right.
and so there is there. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying there's no room for improvement, but it's not just like, hey, yeah, I live here, let me vote. Like there are some checks involved in it.
Yeah, and that's part of
Okay.
like initial voter registration as well, right? Like sending in the documentation when you move to a place to say that I'm part of, to Bill's point, like, I am part of this area in which I will be voting. You go, it's checked off against a list. I think, yeah, I've lived in when I was in the States, same kind of situation.
Okay, yeah, because we didn't have it up until relatively recently as well in the UK either, and I think it's only been a short amount of time where that's become a requirement now, which means that it is improving as a system, and I'm sure that in time it will get to a point where everything will be on the blockchain. I think maybe people need to become a bit more comfortable with it as a technology, and it's become like a day-to-day thing, as mundane as the internet or the phone, or like something that you don't really think about. And that's, I think, well, where chain abstraction is going to come and do a lot of great work there, because I think I also said this before, so I apologize to anyone listening if you hear me saying it again. But being a new, like a new like crypto enthusiast and trying to enter this space, I feel like it's quite complicated to figure out where where do I want to spend my time? What do I want to learn about? There are hundreds of choices, even hundreds of centralized exchanges. Like, how the hell am I going to navigate this really complex space, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in the blockchain world for quite a while. Back when it was basically okay, Bitcoin or Bitcoin, and and I do think it's gotten more challenging, right? Because there's tons of different blockchains out there, tons of different ecosystems, tons of different trade-offs that all of these make. And so I think this is just a hard problem, right? Like when you go into it, like I can't say like, okay, as much as I want to say like, yeah, Polkadot is the greatest blockchain because I work on it. Everyone should look at Polkadot, and that's it. There's I think really the thing that I would recommend for people that are coming into the space is just to be curious and be ready, right? For that. That there are going to be a lot of different chains, a lot of different verticals. I would recommend if you're interested in something, if you're interested in finance, right? There's DeFi. If you're interested in AI, there's lots of AI stuff happening on chains. If you're interested in gaming, there's lots of blockchain games out there, and the particular ecosystem as well. You should be curious and see like, hey, all right, what are the trade-offs and advantages of Solana versus Ethereum versus various L2s on Ethereum? Like it is a huge world, but I would say just be open to and curious, and like be willing to try things out and sort of realize it is this huge world. And just because your first experience, because the first alphabetically, the first letter you saw when you went to an exchange and first decided to try stuff out, you just say, all right, well, this is me. You really should, check things out and figure out like, what works for you, and what for whatever you're trying to do, what are the advantages and disadvantages of it.
I think also zooming out a little bit, one thing I always find when I'm talking to folks who are very like not within blockchain or not within Web3 is how easy it is for folks who are uninitiated to start asking questions really early about how it technically works. When it's like I always try to really reroute people to what is it trying to do? Because you can sit down and you can really talk about how these blockchains operate off the bat, and I feel like you lose your audience so quickly and it just feels so overwhelming because those are very natural questions to ask. What is blockchain? How does it work? And they're great questions too. But I find for the folks that I mostly talk to, it's thinking out what are we trying to build? We're trying to build a more democratic internet. We're trying to enable systems to work better in these ways. Like here's the big vision of what we're trying to do, and then talk about the how. Because I think it's so easy to get lost in that. And I think we also have some it's I think again about that how we also have opportunities when we have things like the current market environment, or we have things like when meme coins, explode. And those can be great on ramps to be like, yes, I understand why this is the entry point, but let's really concentrate on the long term vision of what we're really trying to build, because it is an ambitious vision, and it's one that I think people get really excited about, but that's often not the first interaction with that technology.
Yeah, and very well said. I think the moment you start asking how it works, you need to be prepared for a really complicated answer. And it doesn't just stop with crypto, right? It goes anywhere. Because like I work in engineering. I've done it for a while, and I can tell you on a high level how a laptop works. Like, okay, he's got a CPU and he's got a GPU and he's got a RAM. And okay, but like if I'm going to think through that question as to how a CPU works, I can tell you about the transistors, but I can't tell you how the transistors are put together, or the machine that builds these transistors, and how the hell are we getting to like 3 nanometers in size between those it's mad. Like I can't process any of that. Like if I go to the lowest level, right? And I think operating on the assumption that there is some information that you won't be aware of or that you won't know, it's fine. You should just be comfortable, not knowing for a while, because you can't know everything at once. That doesn't mean you should stop asking the question, though.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely correct. And also, it's like, I think because of the older reputation that blockchain, I think, used to have, especially a couple of years ago, there's the idea that the more I understand about the technology, the more comfortable I'm going to be, which in some ways is really true. Like once you take the time to truly understand it, I think there's a lot of security that comes from that, because you're able to answer some pretty some questions which when we talk about things like attacks, we talk about security, or we talk about like, is this a scam? It's like once you really start learning how some of these work, I think it can be make you feel really secure. But unless you're going to do that work, I don't know if that actually gets rid of the underlying hesitation you might have, which again, I think is why we have to talk in terms of more of what is it, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to build? What's the vision? And then also, of course, tailoring that to an audience. If you're talking to a gamer, it's really exciting to talk about the applications of blockchain technology to like the gaming vertical. Or we talk about, friends of mine who come from finance. Easy to talk about how blockchain can really help with payments infrastructures, or friends of mine in medicine talking about things like how this can help with supply chain around things like vaccines. Like there's so many, like the what we're trying to do is so interesting. It's really important, I think, to really orient strongly towards that, to make that case for that vision. So yeah, it's really it's a really rich question, I think, of like how we get more people kind of interested and engaged and really can see the relevance of it, because it is so broadly relevant to so many parts of society.
100%. And just because you understand it, just because you may understand it, doesn't mean that you still can't be taken advantage of. Like, and
Very true. Very true.
you're probably aware of it recently, because it was a huge article that was written just a few days ago on, right, Ross Ulbricht got out of jail. He got a pardon, and I think, maybe the opinion there is a bit mixed, but I think it's a good thing, because I don't think you can write illegal code. I don't think you point, show me the file, show me the line of code that is illegal there, right? I feel but it's a complex conversation, which we can also get into. But what I wanted to mention is that within a week or so of him getting out, I think he had a few exchanges donated some crypto to him to kind of help him get back on his feet. And he started, with probably someone's help, a pool for a Ross coin on a Solana, or a Solana aggregate, right? And while initializing the pool, he put the wrong amount in, and a MEV bot instantly saw that and virtually caused Ross a loss of $12 million. And that's the guy that built Silk Road. That is the guy that built the world's first, well, let's call it what it is, drug marketplace. Right? Like, it was at the time where people didn't really know what to do with crypto. It was at the time where everyone was looking, okay, what can we do with this? Oh, it's anonymized and secure. Let us buy drugs online then. Let's bring this all business into the 21st century, right? Like, it was, I think, whether you agree or you accept, what is built or not, I think the kind of the use case was absolutely monumental at the time, because he was working with technology where the infrastructure was not nowhere near as the point where we have it today. It's much easier to scale and build stuff today than it was back in the day. So this guy's, for all intents and purposes, an old timer. He got scammed, or due to a mistake of his own, in crypto in 2025, and that's kind of hilarious, but also scary at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great story that brings up sort of 2 points of crypto. Is, one, just how absolutely unforgiving it is when you do make a mistake like this. When there's a bug or a misclick or something, like there is no going back. So you have to be very, very careful. But what I think actually, what you mentioned is like, all right, so Silk Road in 2011, 2012, that was like essentially, the pinnacle of commerce with Bitcoin, right? That was the most advanced stuff out there. And what I love about this industry is how fast it evolves, right? Is that, MEV bots, like I was trying to like imagine, like, someone even thinking about this in 2011 or 2012, like, yeah, someone that's been out of the game for whatever 10 years, this is an entirely new world. It's like, again, I'm not saying this anything bad to Ross. I'm saying this just about how fast everything has evolved in our ecosystem. It's like, someone from the 1800s, trying to start up a newspaper business in 2025, right? They come out and they're like, oh, and then wait a second, people are reading this, online for free. Like, what the heck? And I need to go kill some whales to get more ink. I don't know.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, you're working there with a carburetor engine, and then someone else is just putting rockets on a car. I'm like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's I mean, I think but this goes back like what we were talking about before about like the user experience of crypto, the absolute what's the word no intolerance for mistakes, and it's very easy to make mistakes by the end user, even experienced end users. I think this is something that we're working on. That account abstraction. Like we have various abstraction tools in Polkadot. Ethereum is coming up with it. I don't think they've done their. I forget which EIP it is for their account abstraction. Um, built in. But and I know other teams like Luxo are also working on this. Like I think we're working on figuring out ways to solve this, but we definitely have a ways to go in terms of user interaction and ensuring that pressing the wrong button doesn't wipe out your net worth.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Or like having a reverse button. Wouldn't that be
Yeah.
great on some of this stuff? Yeah. Go back in time.
Yeah, but I mean, this
Yeah,
is some of the things that can happen, right? Like I think of like there are ways to prevent this. Like I think in Polkadot we have time delay proxies, so that anytime you issue a transaction, that you can say, okay, well, it actually isn't going to happen for however many blocks, right? So maybe you set something up so that you get an email every time this is going to happen, and then if like, whoa, I didn't do a transfer, or like this isn't what I meant to do, you can cancel it. Like this is something that exists. We have these sort of things, or social recovery is another sort of concept of abstraction, where like if I lose my private key, I could have set up basically have like 3 out of 5 of my friends verify that like yes, this is Bill, and give me a new account and have it automatically transfer the dot over. So like all of these exists, but it's sort of like there's that famous I think it's Bruce Sterling or William Gibson quote. It's like the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed, right? There's
right.
this does exist,
Yeah.
but not a lot of people are using it yet. It's not quite as user friendly as we'd like it to be, but there definitely are there are solutions to it out there. It's just really getting people to use them.
100%. One of the things that I loved about, well, I still do, about Polkadot was last cycle when I was looking into Polkadot, when I really got into Polkadot, which was about 2020, 2021, I looked at the entire ecosystem and I thought, wow, this is such a cool idea that no one gets. Like it's fantastic, but the wider audience doesn't understand it. It's too far. It's too far ahead of it for its time. Now, 5 years later, I no longer think that Polkadot it's a concept that is too far ahead of its time. I think it's actually at the right time now. I think people understand the value proposition. I think people understand the offering, and I think it's had enough time to mature and to educate at least a subset of users into its actual use cases, which I
Yeah.
think is fantastic.
Yeah. Do you mind if I just spend a second just for your listeners to like sort of understand the basics of Polkadot?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the basic idea is that there is a relay chain, which is essentially a layer 0, that users can then build their own blockchains that are built on top of this chain. So similar to L2s on Ethereum. The big difference is that this chain was originally meant for L2s. You can't run smart contracts on the relay chain. It's not what it was meant for. It's just meant for these other chains. And we have this Polkadot SDK that allows you to build these. But the big difference is that they're automatically secured. There's no centralized sequencers. It's all built in and decentralized, and you can interact across chains. Calling smart contracts from one to another, sending assets from one to another. Very easily and in a built-in way. So developers don't have to think about how to do this on their own, or go through the beacon chain or relay chain first and have the assets go. It's all built in to be a whole network of connected blockchains. And this is the vision I sort of fell in love with, and why I ended up working at Web3 Foundation. When I saw this, it's like, wow, it's like anyone can build their own chain. There's the famous talk by Gavin Wood, one of our founders. He pulled out a laptop, and then by the end of the talk, he had a brand new blockchain running. Brand new laptop out of the cellophane, out of the box, and then by the end of the talk, boom, there's a new blockchain that could be connected to Polkadot. And so I think, yeah, we see like, other chains are moving toward this, right? Ethereum has, for a while, their roadmap has been, let's get L2s, but it's very fragmented. There's lots of different L2s that aren't they aren't compatible with each other, often have centralized sequencers, etc. Cosmos has been moving more towards the Polkadot system. They have their own blockchains, but they're saying, all right, we can have some sort of shared security. So I think you're right, is that, like this Polkadot vision was very far ahead of its time. And now, the general idea, like Polkadot obviously has evolved, but this general idea has continued. I think it was very far reaching. Back when the Polkadot paper was published in 2016, we have continued to sort of evolve this vision, but others are now seeing this vision, right, and say, oh, right, yes, this is now what we need to do in order to scale and do so in a decentralized way.
100%. I think also the fact that it's open source and that people can contribute and people can use this technology as and when they like, without restrictions, is super important, because it also positions, obviously someone like Polkadot in a very advantageous spot where you can act as this infrastructure layer for anyone that might want to, build a blockchain. And that's kind of what you get out of being an open source organization, which, I do think there's a significant amount of advantage in doing that. I'm surprised that no many other industries approach it in this way. A lot of them are like profit first, money first, quick, as much as possible, as quickly as possible, and then forget about the long term in this case. Like, and just to have a product that is at the base, at the like low infrastructure layer for all the other chains, that's massive value in there. Like you've already, you've already tipped the scale and gained more advantages by being an open source organization than not.
Yeah, and this the substrate, the Polkadot SDK is open source, and it is used by the dozens of parachains, these roll ups on the Polkadot system, but also used for lots of other systems out there. Like Midnight, which is one of the, I forget what they call them, but subnets, I guess, like these side chains on Cardano, built with Substrate. There are projects built on Near with Substrate. Avail is built with Substrate, and the nice thing is when there's several nice things about that. That these other teams are using this SDK. That means there are more people that understand the Polkadot SDK. Those chains can also very easily become part of the Polkadot ecosystem. If they're built with Substrate, it's sort of ready made. They can just sort of plug and play, go in. BitTensor, another big one, built with the Polkadot SDK Substrate. So there's lots. I think by us being open source and not saying like, okay, you're getting locked in to Polkadot if you use this. We've said, all right, anyone can build their own chain with this. But they then, when they see the benefits of Polkadot, they can join. I think that's a very useful thing, right? We also have many more developers now available because lots of people are learning how to use Substrate. They're learning how to build essentially on Polkadot, even if they're not directly building on Polkadot. But the more of those that we can, get in, obviously, make it easier for them, the better it is for the Polkadot ecosystem as a whole.
100%. And that's how you make sure you future proof the solution for all new clients and new businesses looking to, create a blockchain of their own. But I guess the limitation remains for the existing, already established big blockchains. What are Polkadot's plans to increase, interaction between chains that are not natively integrated with Polkadot?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that we do. So one is we have several bridges. So for instance, Interlay is essentially a bridge to Bitcoin. Doesn't act exactly like a bridge, but essentially it's a bridge. You can get Bitcoin on and off the on Polkadot in a decentralized way. Snowbridge also for Ethereum for getting assets on and off Ethereum, again in a decentralized way. We have a Hyperbridge, which is a multi-chain bridge. It works for lots of different ecosystems. Again, in a very decentralized way. We do have a couple of centralized bridges, but our focus has always been on decentralization. So I mentioned like Web3 Foundation based here in Switzerland. We are in German, we're a Stiftung. Like we have a specific goal, and our business. We're not like a business. Your goal is to make a profit. Our goal is to bring about the decentralized internet. So when I look at like, all right, what am I supposed to do? Me, Bill Laboon, as an employee of Web3 Foundation or Kori Higgins, we are supposed to bring about the decentralized internet. And so this is what we're doing. This is what we're focusing on, is helping to build a system, Polkadot, that is decentralized. Huge, incredibly high Nakamoto coefficient, which means essentially a lot of different entities would have to coordinate to try to bring down Polkadot. Everything we do when we're building it, we want to make sure that it's decentralized. It's super easy to just say like, all right, I'm going to have a database, right? And then I've got a computer back here. Okay, that's where Polkadot's running. It's super super fast because everything's on one computer, right? But yes, that's super easy, but that's not what we're here for, right? We are here to build something decentralized. So our interactions with other chains, as well as everything else we do in terms of governance, in terms of open sourcing, in terms of education, and reaching out, is meant to help further decentralization of the internet. Right. So in terms of how we're doing it with bridges, like I said, I gave you a few examples, but this is sort of our guiding philosophy, is decentralization.
That is very well put. I like that, and I feel, yeah, 100% that is true. Is that at all related to of the name Web3 Foundation? Is it at all related to the original idea of Web3? I think it's called, the Web3 is being referred to as the semantic web, but then I always had a bit of a like difficulty grasping what the guy meant by that, if you know what I'm
No,
saying.
so the semantic web was sometimes referred to as Web3, but Web3 actually refers to what Gavin Wood, one of our founders, said. How he defined Web3, which is essentially an internet where people can own their own data. So actually, this term Web3, was first, actually, if you look up do a quick Google for Web3 Gavin Wood, you can see the original article. But
Mm.
basically, an internet that users control their own data. They decide who or what they're going to share things with, to share things that they, provably share things that are true. They can verify that this user did it, or conversely hide what they want to do. To have applications that, the code is not just open source, but even openly executed, that you can see, this is the code that I'm running. Even if your bank is open source, you don't really know that it's running the code that you saw on GitHub, right?
Oh yeah.
You're approving it. But when you call an Ethereum smart contract, or you interact with a Polkadot parachain, you can look and see, oh yes, this is the code that will execute when I do X, Y, and Z. And there's broader aspects to this. Things like cryptography and being able to communicate privately with each other, and doing other things privately, being able to prove that you own something. All this is part of this broader Web3 mandate. So Chris Dixon actually, I think, put it really well, where Web 1 was read, Web 2 is read write, and Web 3 is read write own. I mean, if you have to put things into 6 words, then I think that's a really good. I think it's a little more nuanced than that, but I think that's a really good explanation of where we are with Web 3, and I think a really good explanation of what we're trying to do at Web 3 Foundation.
What was really interesting to me was that so the creator of the World Wide Web protocol, Tim Berners-Lee, he referred to it as the semantic web in Web3. But then since he's done that, he hasn't really explored or wrote about or kind of engaged in blockchain or decentralization. And it's obvious to me, because I've been in this space for a while. So it's obvious to me that it's closer to a vision like Gavin Wood describes, and like you described, that it's about decentralization, about owning that data. And I was kind of surprised to see the guy that built the very protocol which we all use today, like being completely kind of like hands off crypto and blockchain. And I'm like, how are you ignoring this, my guy? This is like so relevant to the thing that you did.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for him specifically. I mean, this is pretty common, right? That you look back, this is famously, like Albert Einstein, even though he laid the groundwork for quantum mechanics, never really believed in it. It's as the next generation comes up. So I met with Phil Zimmerman, who did
Mm-hmm.
PGP. Uh, Absolutely, incredibly famous amongst cypherpunks. And he was aware of blockchain, but he was not really digging into it on a day-to-day
Interesting.
basis. And yeah, but I think so that's interesting, right? People do this; they sort of lay the foundations for something new to come up. And I am sure that 20 or 30 years from now, there's going to be some new technology that's going to be absolutely amazing, and I just won't understand it. Like it just, like, I'm sure that's going to happen. My son already is, he's says like memes and stuff that I don't understand. So I'm sure, this happens to all of us, right? And this is not to say anything bad about them. It's not. I'm not trying to be self-deprecating to myself. This is just the way things are. It's like every generation is going to produce something new, but that doesn't mean that generation, like, all right, they have the final word on what it means to be a cypherpunk, what it means to build the internet. We're constantly building on it, and like I said, when I'm dead and gone, there's going to be like people are going to keep building on top of hopefully like what we've created here as well, and like that's what I think is like actually really exciting about the future, is that we're continuing to build.
Yeah, and in a way that we own the data, our data, and the internet itself. And I feel to me that was always one of the important things about decentralization was this ownership aspect, because the internet as is described in the 90s or the early 2000s was a very different internet than the one we have today and the one we've had for about 20 years from now, right? It's an internet that's owned by a handful of organizations, and you can name them within a minute, right? Google owns 99% of the world's search traffic. AWS owns 50% plus of the world's computing traffic, and a couple of other big media organizations throw them in. That's it. That is the internet. If those organizations go down, social media, it's gone. It's done. It's nowhere near the idea of I can exchange info with you, you with me, and we create this cool place for ourselves to enjoy the freedom of information, freedom of expression, and all the cool things that tech can let us build. I feel that since social media, since Web2, people have been trapped into these huge echo chambers that basically tell you how you should behave on the internet and what the internet is and isn't. And if you don't like it, well, fuck you, because all your friends are there. So what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Right? All your content creators are on YouTube, and all your favorite friends are on Facebook and Instagram. And well, not favorite, even the ones you don't like are on there too. So like you've got nowhere to go. And I don't use Facebook, I don't use Instagram, I do use Twitter, but I feel like we just need to own the footprint of the internet, and we don't, and we haven't for a long time.
Well, I would say also, I mean, I would take that example and even just take it a little further. And this is both about ownership, but also back to the idea of transparency and decentralization. So, Bill and I were in Davos, gosh, a couple of weeks ago around some of the conversations around the World Economic Forum. And chief among the conversations that we were seeing was AI. Which is there's so much money, there's so much attention, so much work happening in the area, but that's still an industry that is incredibly centralized. And like,
Oh yeah.
I think social media is a great example of, and we've all seen ways in which this centralization has ended up hurting individuals with social media and also things like financial data. But I think we have a whole new world of possible risk here if we keep so much of the power that we're seeing around AI in centralized hands. So Web3 has like, I think an even new and increased importance. And I just walked around, Davos thinking like, my gosh, like I can't wait to see more communication and more collaboration between our industries, because this is going to be absolutely pivotal to making sure we are living in an innovative but a safe world as well, through and safety through decentralization.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like AI is such a weird industry because it literally started seemingly out of thin air a few years ago. We've had some models and some AI. I don't think they were even products. Like products did not exist 5 years ago. It's literally all like after 2021 where they started being rolled into products with OpenAI, and OpenAI being closed source and looking to find a reason to sue DeepSeek, which is open source, for stealing the very same information that they themselves stole from the web. They hoovered it all up into this, amalgamous mass of just, things that just spats out randomly. So I feel like it, like, don't you feel that it's a little bit hypocritical to try to sue a company for accusing them by accusing them of doing the very thing that you've done, gotten away with? And not only that, but you're also trying to lobby politicians and government officials to make laws which prohibit this very same behavior. So the only companies that are going to continue to exist are the ones that have already broken the law, right, which would have been illegal going forward, would be illegal going forward. And they've trained their models, and they've created such a high barrier to entry that it's already a monopoly. So yeah, I think AI industry is wild to think of being so centralized so quickly.
Yeah, and there are a lot of lessons you can get from Web3. I think to your point also, around you have such that there's such a competitive atmosphere. I think things like, I think at Polkadot we're really also interested, as we talked about before, in like interoperability. Like how can we work together to create kind of a better future, and how can we leverage all of the different assets that we have across different ecosystems, and how can we do that to build a better future, right? It's like I do think like there are some real lessons there that are quite positive in terms of how innovative industries should be thinking about the ways in which they can kind of carry it forward.
Yeah, and just I wanted to add something, onto that, like, about concerns about AI. And I think, Kori, actually, I mentioned this to you when we were talking at Davos, that Web3 is in some ways almost the opposite of AI. Like, AI, very famously is perfectly okay with lying to you. It will just hallucinate. It doesn't know that it's lying to you, but it's perfectly okay with just saying whatever, making up citations, as long as it's like you think that would be the next word. Whereas, like blockchains are exactly the opposite. It is very truthful, very in some ways limited in what it can do compared to AI. It's it's very focused, but it is very good at determining, all right, this happened, or there's been proof that this happened at this point in time on the blockchain. And so I can see that being really useful to help limit some of these things that, like you were mentioning, that hey, this these companies hoovered up all of this data, as you mentioned. Well, if you can prove that, like, all right, you put this data on the web, you put there's easy ways of proving this using, put a hash or a ZK proof or something on a chain, and you can prove, and it will be in that chain and essentially impossible to change, that if some, AI model later says like, no, I had this data well ahead of time, you can prove that it happened, that you had it before they did, and they took it off you. So I do think there's a lot of potential room for collaboration between AI and Web3 to help solve these problems. Because we do see a lot of problems with having, especially with how much computational resources it takes right now to create these models. We do see a lot of centralization. And as Kori said, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. We see this also in Bitcoin world, right, where there's a lot of centralization of miners because there's economies of scale in mining. And so, all right, well,
Yeah.
how can some of these solve it, right? So we can, so I do think there's some parallels here between the crypto world and the AI world.
A lot of room for opportunity for collaboration. I think a lot of good space there.
Yes.
Yeah, I think information, training an AI based on data on the web, I don't think it's inherently bad. I just think it is really important, the spirit and way in which it is done. If it's a decentralized organization working in the open source as a public good, I think just go nuts, man. I don't care. Go and scrape everything, right? Scrape Twitter, scrape Wikipedia, and have this product be for the better of humanity. But to do it for profit, there's something really shady going on, like scraping Shutterstock images that creators are putting together, and then using that to generate images off the back of that, and then charging per API call and making a profit off of that. That's nah, man. That's a bit weird.
Yeah, the problem there is, like, how do you limit it to the actors that you want to use it, or that like you think would be good users of this data, right? Like saying, okay, well, it's okay for these people to do it, but not these, right? Going back to the old cypherpunks, right? Information wants to be free, right?
Yeah.
Once you put it out there, there's going to be not just okay, like the very upright and upstanding nonprofits and also the for profits, but also I am sure like organized crime and others are using AI, and all sorts of scammers are using it in all kinds of bad ways. The problem is anytime you have a new technology like this, anytime you put information out there, both the good guys, the neutral guys, and the bad guys are going to be using it.
Yeah, and I think there's also it's like I mean I've and not to be too doomsday over here, but I think with also things like like AGI and looking at the future of AI, it's like there are some pretty big risks that we could be facing if this is developed in an atmosphere that's a little bit more competitive and maybe inspired by things like by greed or by real unhealthy competition. I think in a way versus that kind of collaborative, transparent energy. Yeah, and I think there's like I'm somebody who's really I really enjoy some of the conversations that we're all having globally around things like existential risk threats and things like that. And again, like we really have to be careful about the development and the innovation. Ethos and environments that we have when we're creating these tools which have such incredible upside but also risks around things like cybersecurity, data privacy, environmental harm, like job loss. Like there's so many things societally that we need to really think through with AI specifically, where like I think right now we're talking about things like copyright and intellectual property, but like I think there's some bigger picture issues here that we really need to be careful that we're really creating that good environment for. And I do think again, like the Web3 movement and vision can contribute positively to a lot of those. And that's not to say that we've gotten everything perfect either. I think we all have worked in this for long enough where we know there've been a lot of lessons learned there. But I do hope other industries take those lessons and can kind of move forward with that.
Before I knew about ChatGPT and OpenAI, I was thinking like how cool would it be to have a device even similar to a neural link, right, or something along these kind of like a neural interface where I can think of a question of a piece of information. I can request that piece of information using my brain and then have this interface go look it up on the web and then present me with that information in a way that I can decode it with my thoughts without any like audio or visual input. So it would effectively mean that you don't have to learn anything anymore because you have all the human knowledge available, at your in your head. Like you just need to think about it and it will be there available for you to consume. um, but now knowing like all I know about how insidious some of these companies are and how some of them are also biased, right? Like it's been proven that a lot of these AIs have a political bias. Like imagine having someone that gives you the truth, but it is always filtered through its own bias, whether it's motivated by money or by politics or by a combination of both. That's a scary world to live in.
Yeah, I'm just thinking with your Neuralink idea of like an obvious example. So being in a I'm a native English speaker and I live in a non English speaking place. It's like wow, that'd be great if I didn't know a word and I could just think like, all right, what's the word for whatever soda, and then all right, my Neuralink would tell me. But I was just thinking like the problems with this is like imagine like there's a bias and I think like wow, I want a soda. And then so I say like, all right, how do I say, I would like a soda in German? And it's like, yeah, ich möchte ein Coca-Cola. And it's like, oh, okay. It's, you know what I mean? Like it and you say it and you're not, right? There's these subtle biases that can creep in, or not so subtle biases. There's a lot of, what's the word? A lot of motivation for companies, for teams, for people to put in these biases. I mean, there's always going to be some bias, right? But having these like really there's some
Mm-hmm.
dangerous biases. Like that's sort of a
Yeah.
funny example. Or all right, so Coca-Cola company made a few more dollars, but you can imagine this being really really dangerous. These biases.
And
Yeah,
then
you
what
get you
happens is
get a
that
Neuralink.
sorry, what's
You're just
happening
gonna
next is that
say
go for it, go for it.
no, no, no. I was literally just gonna say, get your Neuralink sponsored by Coca-Cola. It's all gonna give you like Coca-Cola. It's gonna translate only Coca-Cola. You get it sponsored by Pepsi. It's gonna just give you Pepsi translations instead or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I think what happens in this, Bill becomes the Coca-Cola spokesman in Sweden because he now has a translation filter, but he's paying on a subscription plan to the Neuralink folks, and then all of a sudden, like they cut off his access one day, and then all of a sudden we become dependent on this. It's like I think there's the relationship that we have. I think to these companies, especially as we become more and more dependent upon them for these kinds of things. It's like the power imbalance just becomes even more extreme.
Yeah.
I
It
can't
reminds
wait for the day when they're just going to paint the sky with advertising. Yes, give me those eyeglasses and just put the ads everywhere. That's the only place where we don't have ads. Like it's crazy. When's the last time either of you browsed the web without an ad blocker? My God, what a dumpster fire!
Oh
I
my
can't even
gosh,
imagine doing
I
that.
can't either. Sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
It is. It genuinely is.
Hmm.
No, were you going to say something, Bill?
Um, yeah. So like to Corey's point about depending on things, it really is interesting. Like I remember, I forget if Aristotle's or some Greek philosopher complaining that kids today they read too much and so they don't have to think about memorize this stuff. They depend too much on books. But there's a very big difference between depending on like a book, something you buy and it's yours and it lasts for 50 years or whatever, versus depending upon you know. Uh, whatever the Neuralink company or Twitter, or Facebook, any of these, we're depending on a sort of a very ongoing basis, and it's very hard for me to say like, okay, I want access forever to Twitter, okay, or whatever. Right? There's no way to guarantee that. It's by nature, it's ephemeral, and you have these companies that you're paying a subscription fee to. It's an ongoing thing. It's almost like I think of math, right? It's almost like this continuous function. It's this thing that just there's no quantum where you say, okay, now I have it. I have this one specific thing. It's always this continuous aspect. So I do think there's like a lot of danger in that, and I think that's something like Web3, and I know like what we're helping try to do with Polkadot is take that and put it one step closer to people going almost in some way going back to that, being able to own and say, all right, this is my data. And, as long as this blockchain exists, and these blockchains should continue to operate, then, as long as someone has access to that, I will have access and prove that I have access to this data.
I was actually talking to someone about IPFS, and I was just trying to explain to them how IPFS works. And their conclusion was like, oh, so if everyone shuts their computers down, then my data is gone. I'm like, that's still like less ephemeral than you putting your data probably anywhere else on YouTube servers or Facebook servers or anything like that.
Yeah, there's always going to be these like absolute force majeure, issues. Someone asked me if Polkadot could still operate if every computer in the world stopped working. I said, all right, you got me there. Like, if there are no more computers,
Right.
you can't operate Polkadot.
Aha!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So there is. There's always, going to be these possibilities. The point
If we all die, will Polkadot still run? If all
Right.
7 billion people in the world die because of a massive sun flare, will Polkadot still work though, Bill?
so probably not. It will eventually stop
Yeah.
working. Although the
Yeah.
validators, if it's just people dead, then the validators will still go for a
Why
while.
do you mean you don't have servers on Mars yet?
Yeah,
Your
not
guys are
yet.
falling behind.
That's Polkadot 3.0, actually.
Yes.
That'd be wild though.
Hmm.
Latency would be crazy, I bet.
Yeah, there actually somebody did a so Paul Krugman did actually an interesting thing about like interstellar economies and like being able to transmit, and someone did like an updated analysis of cryptocurrency of like how could you have cryptocurrency on an interplanetary or interstellar basis. Unfortunately, I can't remember the author of that paper, but someone took like this. That people have thought about this already. So like what are we going to do when we are a multi-planetary species?
That is fantastic. I would love if you remember the name, I would love to hear who it is, because that sounds like a fantastic concept. I wonder how, it must be radio waves, because I don't know you can transmit things in a different way. It must be radio waves.
Yeah, some sort of radiation, but and radio or light, I don't know, but they still got these speed of light limitations, right? And
Right.
especially like once you start down to Pluto, when it's like any message out to there is 20 hours or more, and then 20 hours back. All right, you're definitely not going to have like Bitcoin miners on Pluto, right? By the time it knows that transactions are out there, and has a block, by the time it sends it back to Earth, it's not going to work.
Well, Pluto's quite small, though. If you had too many of those miners, I'm sure you'd be warming it up. You'd be terraforming it at the same time.
Yes. All right. So maybe yes. That's the
not a bad plan itself.
Yeah,
not a bad plan in itself. Yeah.
Yeah, we can fund terraforming just by
Sounds great.
sending a bunch of Bitcoin miners to Mars. I like it.
Yeah, sounds good.
I meant to ask you, but I completely forgot when we were talking about the kind of how people find it relatively difficult now to onboard themselves on crypto, because there's so many choices. How was the ecosystem like when you first joined? What was your like initial kind of contact with crypto and blockchain?
So I guess I'll take that first. So I actually was doing. I actually heard about Bitcoin relatively early on, but I didn't, actually do much with it. I was doing hash algorithm analysis for my work, and someone said, "Hey, there's a way to make money using hashing." And I was like, "What are you?" So hashing, for people that aren't familiar, that's basically what Bitcoin miners are doing. They're running this function over and over again, but this function has other uses that I was using it for. So I actually read the paper very early. I says, "Oh, okay, that's interesting," and then left for a while, and then I really, I came back a few years later, and then got into it. But but even then, that really, it was just Bitcoin. I think Litecoin was around starting in 2011. These are all really variations on a theme. I think the big jump was with Ethereum. Being able
Hmm.
to have smart contracts and a Turing complete programming language. I mean, technically, you can do smart contracts on Bitcoin, but like something that's actually easy to do it. And so this is really like what I saw when I first got in. It's like what got me excited is just the ability to do any of this stuff, right? But then I was working in academia. I was used to teach at the University of Pittsburgh. Was getting more and more involved in blockchain, and actually, once I saw Polkadot, once I saw Gav's talk where he pulled out the laptop and then had his own blockchain running, and then was able could then later add it to the Polkadot network. I said, all right, I have to be a part of this, and that's really when I went full time. Moved from the U.S. to Switzerland to be a part of Web3 Foundation. I just sort of realized like, okay, this this solves a lot of the problems that we're having, and lets us actually move towards this Web3 world, because we don't have these scalability challenges that we had like with a monolithic blockchain. That's sort of like my journey in a nutshell.
I had a very different one to Bill's, but I actually got it a bit later because my background was way less technical, and I was actually coming from hedge fund finance. So I was working in the financial markets, and we had a venture capital portfolio. And I remember one of the companies we looked at, I think, was in the space, which is really kind of the first time I really engaged with it. And and I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but the thing that onboarded me, the thing that radicalized me in the Web3 direction was Crypto Kitties. Remember that game, that like trading thing? And I remember doing that, and I was just like, it was an aha moment. I was like, oh my, like this is going to change everything. Like the amount of ownership, the amount of interaction, like I totally got it in that moment. Like the idea of like NFTs and all of these new ecosystems that could come up. And I saw the light, right? And I started getting into the environment, the community at that point in New York. This is around like, 2018. And it's like, there were some really cool conversations going on. The energy was phenomenal. It was like going to crypto Mondays, and people were talking about like fractionalizing real estate and all these cool new applications for this, and it was still very playful and very fun. um, yeah, and so I got into that a bit, and then I ended up going from hedge fund finance. I joined the Stellar Development Foundation because coming from a background in finance and payments, that made a lot of sense to me, and that also again just broke open the idea of like, let's really question how these incumbent models of sending money, especially cross border, which is a huge benefit to like the Stellar to Stellar's protocol, and like understanding, really getting behind how can we use this technology to liberate people and to liberate them from and for Stellar, like the economic environments that they find themselves in, and really take advantage of the technical tools that we have available, to really make their lives easier. So we did that. And then I moved from there over to Polkadot, which was really interesting. And that was a huge shift as well, because Polkadot's use case agnosticism, I think, was really interesting for me. And I just found continually through my years in this industry, some of the most interesting, some of the smartest people who are challenging all of these incumbent ideas. I just love the ethos and I love the philosophy in it. And again, we don't get everything right. I don't agree with everybody, what everybody's doing, but I love that we're all thinking creatively in the same direction about how we can make a better future using the technology we have at our fingertips. I think it's great. So that's what keeps me here. And that was kind of my way in.
That's a fantastic way of putting it. I feel like the optimism that this industry has is probably unparalleled. And even if you don't agree with someone in this industry, you still respect them for the work that they do and the fact that they're in this industry at all. And I think that's quite cool. You don't see a lot of spaces like this, and I love to see that, and I love to
I
hear it too.
agree. I agree, and I also why I'm so bullish on, I think, even certain kinds of like games or memes or whatnot in this industry as onboarding, because again, like I was a crypto kitties person that came onto this, so I'm pretty I'm optimistic, I think, about making this stuff playful and fun, and that's a great way to get more people into the space.
To be fair, though, there's just
I
so
couldn't
many
have
great
said
use cases. Sorry, Bill.
I just want to say I still have 7 CryptoKitties. They're
Do you
still
really? Hey,
they're
well,
still on
listen, you
my.
want to make any trades? Let me tell you,
Yeah, okay,
I
yeah,
got a
we
nice
can talk about
lineup.
trading after
All
this.
right,
Yeah.
great, great, great.
No, I don't have any crypto kitties, but I was just gonna say there's so many like, amazing use cases in gaming. I've spoken to various people that have built or worked on building Web3 games, and like the technology is just fantastic for that. Like NFTs for gaming, amazing. But again, it really matters the spirit in which you approach this technology. Because if you're a hungry company like Ubisoft and you try to jam NFTs into your game just to squeeze more money out of the product, that's no good, right? But if you build an experience that creates, there was some guy, I forget his name now, but I'll send you guys the name of the person when I remember. He spoke about building. Oh, it was the guy from Horizon.io, building a layer of um, agnostic kind of NFTs across different games. So in an ecosystem where you could have a sword in one game and then import it into another game because they're all compatible because they follow the same principles. I thought just that's mind blowing. Like I could get this item in that game and play it and have like a interconnected metaverse like world. Like sign me up. That's epic. So there's fantastic use
Absolutely.
cases in there.
Absolutely. And I think in this space too, and it's like we see that one thing I do love about like kind of the diversity of the use cases within Polkadot. And one thing I find really interesting about our ecosystem is like you do have like you have the serious like transparency into finance or like or supply chain. It's really high utility kinds of use cases, but you can't forget the fun. You really can't. I mean, I think again, to your point about gaming, entertainment, like sports, like there's so many fun ways you can engage with these things. NFTs, like there's ultimate, there's so much possibility in that, and it's nice, I think, to be able to appreciate kind of both sides of that. And also, as we talk about it, I think it's really easy sometimes to try to make the case for Web3 and for blockchain in terms of like, yes, like this life changing, world changing, very serious, very, very serious technology for serious problems. It's like, yeah, and also there's a lot of silliness, and I think there's a tremendous amount of value in that.
Agreed. Yeah, there is value in that for sure. There is. You can see that how retail reacts anytime there's like a new meme coin or something just that comes up and takes the world by storm. It gets reported everywhere, and that's good because it gets people it gets people interested. Some people are gonna, yeah, I guess, go down the weird rabbit hole and just start buying like dubious coins and whatnot. But I do think there is space to have fun here, and I think people should you should have fun with it, man. Like you shouldn't feel guilty because you own an NFT because all the crypto elitists look down on you. Like, oh, so whatever, you own an NFT, just be proud of your
Yeah,
crypto kitties. They're fantastic.
I'm extremely proud of them. I'm extremely proud of
How
them.
many do you have?
I have about 6. I've given a number away or sold them at the so I've also been especially years ago, and I'd have friends be like ask any question about it. They'd be like, okay, you have to open up a MetaMask wallet, and I'm going to show you how to do this. I paid so much in gas fees, just like an opportunistic moment, trying to onboard somebody else to blockchain, being like, here's my cat. Like I don't, so it's yeah. So I have fewer now than I used to, but they're great. They're great ones. So Bill, we'll have to talk about
Yeah, we
trades
can talk about
offline.
trading. Yeah,
Okay. I have some rare characteristics on some of my kitties. I'll tell
oh
you.
wow, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
I remember my son he was 5 at the time and was extremely excited about like owning CryptoKitties. So like some are actually I'd give
Wow.
him some, and then he was so excited like, "Ooh, I want that one to be the mommy and the daddy," because you make baby CryptoKitties,
Yeah.
which also that's a great introduction. So when you need to talk about the birds and the bees. So another benefit of CryptoKitties. So,
Side benefits, so many benefits, so much utility in
so
these
much
in these
exactly.
space.
It's
Yeah,
good
exactly.
utility. Yeah.
Right, right.
Just onboard your kids early so they know the game. Yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
Your kid's practically a crypto native at this point. 5 years
Yeah.
old and knows more than probably a lot of people out there.
Yeah, he really grew up with crypto. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's so cool. So I meant to ask you both: are there any cool projects that have recently come out of the Polkadot ecosystem? Because working with something that can be used as an infrastructure layer, you're in a unique position where you can kind of understand what are the cooler things that people are building. And is there anything that you guys feel like it's underrated and should get more attention and people are not giving it?
So for me, well, I can see Kori is thinking right now. Yeah, a big thing that I think is super interesting coming to the Polkadot ecosystem is Accurast. So this is using old phones or new phones, if you want, as basically distributed computing and getting reimbursed
Cool.
for doing this. So that because it turns out, like phones are they're extremely efficient computers. And so for certain mathematical operations, it's like extremely efficient to use these and extremely cheap compared to using a traditional um, like AWS, like a elastic computing server or whatever. And so Accurast is being built on Polkadot so that you can both the users who need this computation can program for it, and those who want to get tokens for running using your own phone or using another phone to compute in its off time can do so. So I think this is like extremely interesting. It's coming out on Polkadot very very soon. Um,
Yeah,
Accurast.
I'm
So what's that? ACCURAS?
ACURAST.
ACURAST.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Also based here in Zug. So
Nice. Oh, I'm really due a
here.
visit there.
yeah, you really please feel free to stop by. It's a beautiful place.
I was going to say there are so many great companies that are building on Polkadot. I think personally, I have I really find fractionalized real estate really interesting, and so I think Excavate is doing a great job with that. But one thing I'd also want to point to is one thing that I find I'm particularly excited about. This is a little bit more well known, of course, is Mythical, which is like a leading innovator in Web3 gaming, which transitioned from Ethereum to Polkadot last summer, and they've been a great leader in again Web3 gaming, and I think we're really seeing a little bit more attention on Polkadot for its utility around that gaming sector. So I'm really excited to see what's going to come out of that. They've done NFL Rivals. I think they've got a game with FIFA now. Like that's really
Ooh.
just continued to expand. And also, it was lovely to see their transition to Polkadot and how smooth that went and how successful that's been. So I think when we look at when we start looking at how Polkadot's going to kind of expand and go forward in 2025 and beyond, it's like I love looking at that kind of as a success case. But I think actually some of the most exciting things for me, and actually, Bill, I'm going to point this to you in just a second, which is to say, I think Polkadot itself is going to go through some really interesting changes over the next 2025. Some of the things that we have coming up over the summer, and also Jam, I think is going to be really exciting. And so I think Polkadot itself and how Polkadot becomes a place that it provides more optionality for developers to come over starting in the summer, I think is going to be great. So yeah, I think the expert to explain some of that is probably Bill, actually, out of the two of us. But again, I think that's the thing that gets me the most pumped up.
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of different things as Kori mentioned. So first off is the completion of Polkadot 2.0, which is we're sort of in the process. It's a multi-stage process that makes it easier for parachains to onboard, go faster, have more computational resources, using this latest technology that's coming, elastic scaling, getting block times down to 2 seconds, and finalization only a little bit longer than that. And then moving to this hub and cloud model. So essentially adding essentially native smart contracts to Polkadot. So instead of having to build out your own parachain, you can also get a lot of the benefits of Polkadot, including interacting with these parachains, but from traditional EVM compatible smart contracts. Which allows for very easily to build things up, and things from other ecosystems to also work here. And then Jam is really a major shift in how things work. A little bit further out, it's already been well defined. There's I think 45 teams working on implementations and of Jam. And the first one actually just started saying that they were producing blocks a few days ago. But this essentially allows a couple of different things. One, from a programming perspective, it allows you to, I'm going to elide over some details here, but essentially work in a sharded environment in a way that's very similar, and easier, like you would on a monolithic blockchain. So it's just like being able to run any sort of code. Doesn't even have to be blockchain related. Have it interact with blockchains. Have it do what you need to do. Have it done in a distributed way. Allow different chains and different services to interact with each other very easily. They can sort of pretend they're operating together. It's going to be an incredible advancement for people looking to program. and develop things. This is one of the problems, right? It's hard to program sometimes a blockchain entirely from scratch, even with the Polkadot SDK, which makes it a lot easier. But this would allow you to be much more easily develop things and have them interact with other items in the ecosystem without dealing with things like asynchronous programming and all these much more difficult concepts. So Jam also a little bit further in the future, but really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, thank you both. I think this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for joining. And I would love to have you guys again at some point when you launch Polkadot 2.0. I think that'll make a fantastic conversation as well. Do you have anything that you wanted to, anything that I wanted to mention or anything at all that you wanted to add? Socials or anything?
Sure. So yeah, I'm at Bill Laboon on Twitter, or X as they call it, or just Google my name, Bill Laboon. It's pretty rare, so you'll probably find me wherever wherever I am. And also it's been a while now, but I have to shout out my book, Strength in Numbers, which is it's a science fiction novel. But as you read it, you get to learn how Bitcoin works as the story progresses.
Wow.
So very interesting. If you want to learn a little more about how Bitcoin and blockchains work, while also reading a book, Strength in Numbers by Bill Laboon.
And I'm at Kori Higgins on X, and also just wanted to say, of course, that we are also excited about Web3, and we're so excited about the future and some of the things that are happening with Polkadot, but also just in general some of what we've talked about on over the last hour and change. So it's like if anybody listening wants to get in touch and learn more about Polkadot, what we're building, what's coming up, feel free to say Bill throw you in there to reach out to either of us. I think for any conversations, whether it's on what we think the future of AI will be. I can talk about existential risk threats for way too long if anybody wants to talk about that, or some of the great teams that are building on Polkadot, because I think we're so lucky to have such a great community and ecosystem. But yeah, there's a lot to chat about, so really would welcome anybody who's interested to get in touch.
Epic. Well, thank you both so much, and I shall speak to you both soon.
Sounds great.
Have
Thanks
a
so much for having us.
Oh no, my pleasure. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.